All right, we're back again. Today I want to go over our congressional organization and committee worksheet. I know depending on if you were in my class or Mr. Anderson's class, you were assigned this at a different time, but I want to make sure that we understand everything going on. So organization of Congress, a lot of these jobs, you can obviously figure out who they are based on just a quick Google search. I think it's more important that we understand the job itself, though. So, Speaker of the House, we know is Nancy Pelosi. Her primary responsibility is to oversee and control the flow of the events in the House, as far as who gets to talk, when they get to talk, so on and so forth. Your majority and minority floor leaders, they're important in the sense that they organize their specific parties. So if you are in the House, for example, the Democrats, you have the Democratic floor leader. In the House, the Republicans are the minority party, so you have the minority floor leader, and their job is to ensure that their agenda is being pushed through in the various committees within the House. Now, the whips are interesting. You have a whip for both the majority and minority party, and you have a whip in both the Senate as well as the House. Their job is to ensure that the party's bills have the votes that they need to pass. So their job is to go from group of people to group of people and try to drum up votes. That could be negotiating, that could be making promises. It could be whatever they deem necessary to try to drum up votes. If you vote yes on this bill, we'll vote yes on your bill later on down the line, kind of negotiating, coming up with deals, various things. Painting that fine line between what is ethical versus not ethical to ensure that their bill gets passed. If you've ever watched the Netflix show House of Cards, the main character in that show, he starts out as a whip, and that show's a little interesting because it shows kind of the dirty side of politics, and he does do a lot of closed door deals, shady deals to try to get legislation passed in his favor, right? That's not to say that that's what's going on in our government right now, but I think we'd all be kind of naive to say that that doesn't happen on occasion, right? So you have whips and you have floor leaders in both the House and the Senate. Interesting thing to make note of in the Senate, you have both the president and the president pro temp. The president of the Senate is always the vice president of the United States. His job is to preside over the Senate, similar to the Speaker of the House in the House. He, however, does not hold the same level of responsibility as the Speaker of the House, and we'll get to that more on the second sheet of this worksheet. His real responsibility is only to break a tie. You see that right there on that third line. His real responsibility is only to break a tie when it comes to a vote. You think about it, you have 100 senators, you could very easily have a 50-50 split on a piece of legislation, a bill trying to be passed, and so the president of the Senate, which is our vice president of the United States, he would then split the vote because he would be that 101st vote, right? So moving on down here, how is the role of the Speaker of the House different from the Vice President? So this is what I was just talking about. The Speaker of the House really controls the flow of the House, as far as you need permission from the Speaker to bring something new to debate, as far as getting something on the agenda, all this various stuff. Whereas the Vice President really kind of just sits back, and the Senate is a bit more of a free-for-all than the House. That president pro temp, he steps in when the vice president is not available, right? Because the vice president's obviously not there in the Senate all the time. He really only shows up for that tie-breaking kind of moment. So the president pro temp kind of lets the Senate do its own thing as far as floor agenda, as far as discussion goes, as far as which bill we're talking about today, this, that, and the other. The Speaker of the House, it's more regiment, right? There's more structure to it. And the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, who's currently the Speaker, controls what's being discussed at what point, and so on and so forth. Now, what I want to focus on next is our different types of committees. These are important to know for the test, knowing the difference between standing and select and joint versus conference. So make sure you're taking note here. A standing committee is a committee that is always there. This committee, their job is to pass bills, pass laws, create regulations, take action, so on and so forth. Examples of standing committees would be, we always have a committee on war, even if we're not at war. We always have a committee on defense. We always have a committee on tax. These are there forever. You almost, if you think about it, you would have a standing committee for almost every single express power in the Constitution, right? So there's one on tax, there's one on commerce, there's one on war, there's one on defense, so on and so forth. Select committees are a little bit different. Select committees are there for a temporary period of time because there's something unique going on. There's a special purpose for that select committee. They conduct investigations, they do studies, they handle issues of crises. Something has happened that this committee is a necessity for the time being, but they will go away once whatever that is done. So think about right now, we have a standing committee for the coronavirus right now. We have a standing committee to help handle the pandemic that's going on in the world right now. Similarly, we had a standing committee when 9/11 happened. We had a standing committee on Hurricane Katrina. There's currently a standing committee conducting Alzheimer's research. They're doing investigations because something happened, something needs to be taken care of for the time being, right? Joint committees. Joint committees are a standing committee, so they're there permanently, unlike the select committees. They're there permanently, and they have members of both the House and the Senate in them. So we have a standing committee, for example, on taxation. A joint committee, I should say, on taxation, where you have members from both the House and the Senate working on tax legislation. We have a joint committee on the Library of Congress, so they handle the various documents that get put away in the Library of Congress. They handle research of speeches and important documents that various presidents have written, so on and so forth. All the matters of the library. Now, a conference committee is like a joint committee, but it's temporary. So it's a joint committee and a select committee kind of put together. You only hold a conference committee when you're looking to pass a bill. So when a bill's been proposed and it's gone through both the House and the Senate, the two come together, members of the House, members of the Senate, in a conference committee to come up with a common version. Because what the House has proposed and the Senate has proposed is not necessarily 100% the same. For a bill to pass, the House and the Senate, the two parties, have to come to an agreement and come up with one unique bill. So these conference committees only exist when a bill is in the process of passage. Once that bill's been passed or rejected, the conference committee ceases to exist. Now, the House Rules Committee. This is a standing committee, and the House Rules Committee is responsible for deciding if a proposed bill will be seen or heard by the House. So they act as a traffic cop, as the question asks. They act as a traffic cop in the sense that they decide if a bill even gets discussed. If they don't like a bill, these members of the House committee, they can very well just push it down the line so it never gets heard or discussed at all. They can, in many senses, destroy a bill because they have the power to stop it from ever even being discussed. So that's kind of one of those differences, again, between the House and the Senate. The Senate, bills get discussed all the time because there's more freedom to hold discussion on the Senate floor, whereas the House, there's a very strict set of rules, and the House Rules Committee is a perfect example of that must be met before a bill can even be discussed. And the fact that the House Rules Committee controls the calendar and when bills can be discussed is a perfect example of that. So that was just a quick recap of the congressional committees and the organization of Congress. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to post that key for you guys as well, so you can check your work with my key, and we'll carry on from there. So take care, boys. Be safe, and until next time.